Greetings, kindred. I am Voivode Maquette, and welcome back to our World of Darkness, where we are continuing with Chapter 5, The Plan. Loose ends. I woke in my bed in the B&B, and for a moment thought the whole werewolf business had been a dream. Then I heard a giggle, looked up and saw Anya, looking at me with a grin. "Girl, you sure know how to party. You were gone for 2 days." She shook her head. I was beginning to worry. "And what was with sneaking in through the window in the middle of the night? Naked?" She raised her eyebrow. "I did some crazy things back home, but I've never partied that hard." "Yeah." I got startled, but by a stray dog. On my way back, panic shape-shifted and ruined my clothes again. There was so much to talk about. I didn't know where to start. "I'm alright. Sorry for disappearing so suddenly," I said, because what else could I say? I got lost in the forest. Technically, that part wasn't a lie. Then I stumbled on the activist and kind of got carried away. I packed my bag in silence. I felt a rift growing between me and Anya, and I felt a sudden urge to tell her everything. Told her the truth. I was a guru, and I had a sacred duty to protect the veil, hiding us from mortal eyes. But Anya was my friend. There's no easy way to say it. I looked at Anya. "I think I'm a werewolf." "You... what?" She laughed uneasily. "Yeah, never mind." I sighed and continued packing. "So, are you leaving?" asked Anya. "What about the forest?" I shrugged. What the answer was, it was now Maya the werewolf's problem. Maya the student was dead. "I'll be in touch." Anna hugged me. "You'll figure it out." I sighed, took my bag, and left. Everything according to plan. I dropped my bags in the camp and ran through the plan one more time. They expected me to act like a Ahurun, but Kim had proposed another plan, one less dangerous. Inspiration needed. We needed something to boost morale and bring us some good PR. And my idea of live streaming a day in the Puzka was met with enthusiasm. Kim proposed that Daniel take us to the old wolf den. The route was scenic. The story of the stolen cubs was touching, and it showed how people, even when they meant well, could disturb the natural balance. Kim left Daniel and me to work out the details. "I'm not going away," they said. "I'm more of a city animal." We needed authentic human emotions, so we asked some of the activists to join us on the trail. Anya also decided to come. Planning it took a few days, but finally we were ready. We gathered the crew and set off well before sunrise. Live streaming. It was early morning. The forest was a mosaic of light and shadows, all hazy and rustic, but the path Daniel chose was clear and sharp like a ray of light. Before we set off, Pat gave me, as she called it, a spirit-enhanced router. I turned it on and we started live streaming our adventures. I could feel the warmth deep in my body. The Pushka was glad we were there and made sure our walk was pleasant, nudging the wind towards us when it got too hot and making the sunlight more golden on the leaves. As we got closer, I kept looking over my shoulder. Something was wrong. No human would register it, but I heard it as clearly as I heard Daniel. A low, angry growl. Wolves, I realized. I could hear their steps, their paws gently treading between the old leaves and fallen branches. They were hunting, and I realized, as the hair raised on the back of my neck, they were hunting us. I nodded to Daniel, letting him know that we should take the humans away from there. Then I saw her, the wolf mother. A pack of wolves followed her, spirit-ridden, their eyes smoldering. "Stay as you are, cub," she said gently. "You swore to me. Let me have my revenge." I felt my blood become hot, my body shift. I was Lupus, the wolf form. I doubled down in pain, my arms and legs cracked and twisted, my skull fractured and reset itself in a different shape, fragments of bones clawing under my skin. My skin was rippling and sprouting fur. I howled in agony. When the pain subsided, I was Lupus, a wolf, seeing the world and smell and sound. The world went gray, but the smell, the colorful, stronger than ever. I made sure to run in front of the camera. The live stream needed good content after all. And then right to the wolves, my hair standing on end, my teeth bared. The pack ran through the forest, single-mindedly focused on their prey, not paying attention to anything else. I jumped in their path, growling, and they stopped and surrounded me. I jumped towards the leader and bit into her side. She yelped. I jumped back and saw that all 5 wolves were now fixated on me. I'd gotten their attention all right. Now I needed to be as quick as the wind. I ran like the devil was after me. A wolf pack isn't a match for a werewolf, though, especially if the werewolf is friend to the Pushka herself. The wolves couldn't quite catch up with me, and I played with them for some time until I was sure Daniel had finished the job. Spoils of victory. The stream was a success. The internet was on fire, and Pushka Biowaveska suddenly became a trending topic. I was slightly envious of Daniel's fame. I was kind of envious of Daniel's fame and the influence his story had having on people. I knew my work was important. I knew what if I hadn't been for me, the stream would have ended in tragedy. But damn, I wanted that. I wanted to tell people stories. that would have them move that much. Good job, Cornell. Good job, Cornell said when we met that evening. And a great job it was. A moment of triumph. I couldn't wait for the Sept meeting that morning. The streaming was my rite of passage, and I knew that I did great. I was unstoppable. We met soon after the sunrise, on the same clearing where I woke up the first time as a guru. Lisa looked at us all and smiled. Our patrons were looking at her expectantly. So she stepped towards the center of the clearing. I'm the Theurge of the Sept, and I'm here to make sure we do things the right way. She turned to me, and I held my breath. Maya, come forth. Are you a cub who seeks recognition as an adult? I am, I answered solemnly. Are you an applicant to a tribe? Lisa asked again. I am, I answered. Who speaks for the cub? Lisa looked at her sepmates. I do. Daniel stepped forward. I'm Fargaze, of the Red Talons, Galliard, of the Morning Mother Wolfpack. I observed the cub on her mission, and I'm here to tell the story. I wondered if they all had cool secret names. They probably had. I love the ancient spiritual vibe of it all. Has the cub passed her challenge? Asked Lisa. I knew how it all happened, but I held my breath nervously. Nevertheless, she succeeded, was the answer. But it was pure luck. She's not ready. The Seerge shook her head. She succeeded, and that means she's ready. Have you chosen your name? Lisa turned to me. My new secret name. Suddenly I remembered my grandfather talking about his old friends. He never used their real names. They were always Thunder, or Gray, or Needle. I'd always thought it was a guerrilla thing, some kind of war names. But I wasn't so sure anymore. How to capture my whole life, my aspirations, my personality, my heritage in one name. I cleared my throat. My name is Mist, I answered, thinking of fog and of the Valkyries from Norse legend. Choosing the tribe was another matter. This is actually a very difficult decision. I'm not personally interested in bone gnars or glasswalkers. I'll go with Child of Gaia. After getting to know Olga, both Olga and Cornell better, I decided to join the Children of Gaia. A tribe that believes in peace with humans, and that rage is a taint of the worm. Not the righteous fury of Gaia. hated by other tribes for their reluctance to use violence and their celebration of pacifist human philosophies. Cornell agreed to mentor me. Only one thing remained to end the ceremony and make me a full-fledged guru. I had to join a pack. As my fate had already been tied to the Wolf Mother, I chose her as my patron and joined Olga's pack. There was no love lost between me and Olga, but I was a valuable addition to her pack, and she was good enough a leader to recognize it. According to ancient rites, Lisa painted the mystical glyphs of my tribe on my sternum. It disappeared after a moment, but whenever I closed my eyes, I could feel its warmth touch between my breasts. Mist of the children of Gaia, Ahurun of the Morning Wolf Mother Pack, welcome to our sept, she said solemnly. Howls rose towards the sky. They sang about ancient laws of war, status, and secrecy. I remembered only a few. Combat the worm wherever it dwells and whenever it breeds. Submit to those of higher station. Respect those beneath you. The veil shall not be lifted. I threw my head back and howled with my sept. I was a cub, no more. I was ready to tell my own stories, to earn my own place in the pack, to howl my own songs. I think we're going to go ahead and keep going. That was a rather short chapter, so chapter 6, The Storm. Dust to dust. It was one of those blistering summer days when the asphalt melts, the grass withers, and the air smothers those brave enough to step outside. Despite the heat, it felt like the whole village was at a funeral. I stood there, surrounded by sweaty bodies, looking at the rosaries they clutched in their fists. There was nowhere to run. One of the security guards had been found dead near the logging site. Nobody knew exactly what had happened to him. There were whispers of rabid wolves. It was our doing, my doing, and the death had tipped the scales. It was a hidden side of a warrior's glory, funerals and families, waiting for people who'd never come back home. I could feel the tension seething around me. This death, this funeral had pushed the community, already wary and frightened by the recent disappearances in the forest, to the edge. The press had swarmed to the funeral like flies. I could hear them squawking around eco-terrorism, aggressive vegan activists. The police was watching the crowd with disinterest as they leaned lazily against trees. Suddenly, Pushka Białowieska had become politically charged and the hottest place to be in Poland. And it wasn't only politicians and activists from both sides who'd caught wind of the commotion. The Minister of Environment himself had driven to Białowieska to attend the funeral. He was standing next to the priest conducting the ceremony, surrounded by police and what looked like a handful of bodyguards. The coffin went down, and the crowd stirred. Everyone started lining up to throw handfuls of dust on the coffin or put flowers on the grave. "Just look at them," said Lisa, joining me. "Nobody wants us here. They fear us, but would never admit that." "Ignorance breeds fear," I shrugged. "It's so human to fear anything they don't understand." "They would want us gone, even if we weren't the guru," she scoffed. "From the outside, we're activists fighting for the Pushka. But for the local, we're just strangers barging in and telling them what to do with their lives." "Well, we are strangers barging in and telling them what to do," I shrugged. "But sometimes you need a stranger to see what you have before your very eyes." Nevertheless, she was right. The crowd was not happy seeing us there, and the minister knew how to use that sentiment. I watched in disbelief as the priest handed him the mic. After 30 seconds of listening to that pompous ass, I thought I would vomit. He spoke at length about the Polish economy, the importance of the free market, and the liberty of the people to make money from that God had given them to reign over the earth. Judging by their reactions, it was exactly what the crowd wanted to hear. I realized the conflict was only going to escalate. He was determined to push on with the logging. But we had public opinion on our side, and we were ready to stand our ground. Big bad wolves? It was high noon. The sun was at its most merciless, and the world was almost white with heat. The air smelled of herbs, bark, and tree sap. Insects buzzed lazily in the high grass, stunned by the summer sun. We lounged in the shadows of the trees, resting after a busy night. We were ready for war. I watched the clearing with cold detachment, running through the possible scenarios in my head. There's so many of us. People kept coming to the camp, asking questions, looking for ways to help. Students, activists, even Greenpeace with banners reading "Stop Logging" and "Respect EU law." They'd all seen our live streaming and came there to help. We weren't the only ones in the clearing. A group of local citizens, their banners reading "Foresters save trees from woodworm" and "Forestry equals jobs," were trying to get the attention of the media. The Pushka was watching us. Every time a gust of wind was bringing the wet smell of the forest to my nostrils, I felt her strong, steadfast presence. She knew that we were doing everything in our power to save her. I could feel the immense presence of the forest, whose life was a myriad of smaller lives, interconnected into one super organism. And then I looked at us and them and smiled bitterly, because I realized that both sides of the conflict saw the other as a sickness and themselves as a cure. I looked at the defaced harvesters waiting on the other side of the clearing. Loggers milled around them like ants over the disturbed anthill. The pressure was almost palpable, and tempers were flaring. "Everyone knows what to do," Olga asked, looking at my pack. "I'll keep the security guards occupied," nodded Lisa. "And I'll guard the Pushka perimeter," growled Daniel. The weasels were in their position among the protesters as agreed. That left the cops to me. "I'll keep my eyes on the cops," I said. "And we'll make sure that the activists are safe." "That's not the plan," Olga reminded me, with a predatory snarl. "Deal with the cops. And then we burn the harvesters." The police were nervous, huddling in groups and shouting at each other and everyone who was in their way. They clearly didn't want to be there. It was apparent that they were waiting for something. It reached the boiling point when the minister arrived for a photo op. I took it as a good sign. We could use his presence to our advantage in more than one way. Journalists swarmed around him, praising his balanced forestry policy as they steered clear of the ugly harvesters. In hindsight, you could argue that what happened next set a chain of events in motion that had life-changing consequences for many. There's nothing that changes is sudden. There's a notion that change is sudden. Movies and video games would have us believe that it takes one moment, one decision, one knock-on effect to turn the tide, but the world doesn't work like that. It works like a forest, like the Pushka. Change is a slow, barely visible process. A series of decisions, yes, but also coincidences of changes being taken and people doing what they can do to survive. Change is like growth, and we had grown. The members of my sept had already moved to their positions, and I also had my part to play. I lit the wick that was made from scrap of my old t-shirts, watched the flame for a moment, and threw the Molotov cocktail at the nearest harvester. Flames engulfed the machine, and before they died down, a barrage of flaming bottles and stones followed. The final battle. When the real fight began, the adrenaline kicked in, and the world split into freeze frames. Pain hits me like a wrecking ball. Every bone in my body breaks and moves and resets, and I roar in agony. Panting and growling, I rise and rise and rise. I'm an 8-foot-tall killing machine. I see a young man in work overalls staring at me with a terrified expression, an axe in his hands. I slap him in the back of the hand, and he falls out of my sight. I slap him with the back of my hand, and he falls out of sight. Cops are running our way, shouting orders, batons raised, faces red with anger. I roar and smash into them, toss them around until they run. I looked around the battlefield. All is good. The cops are retreating. Soon the whole clearing will be ours. It's time for the final blow. The cops are closing in on a group of activists. Heavily equipped men against teenagers, old women and clueless hipsters. Batons appear above the crowd, and they disappear again. The air is heavy with pepper spray. The cops are angry and scared. Some of them don't want to be here, and they aren't sure if they are doing the right thing. But orders are orders, and it's too late to back down now. So they fight harder to quiet their doubts. I'm fed up with overthinking. I'm Gaia's rage, and it's time for revenge. I start running. The cops reach for their pepper spray and tasers. Pepper spray stings my nose and eyes, and the electric shock hurts. I push through until I'm standing between my friends and the police. I grab the nearest cop's arm and twist, and as he crumbles, screaming. I'm on the others. Then I hear shots and whimpers, and I realize it doesn't matter anymore. All is lost. I stood there, doubled over, my hands on my knees, blood flowing down my face and into the ground. My nose was smashed, and I couldn't breathe. I hurt all over. Despite being outnumbered, we'd stood up to the forces of the worm and the weaver. We'd faced the harvesters, and we'd lost. The battle was vicious, teeth and claws against metal, flesh and bone against glass. We'd fought. We'd done our best, but we'd failed. We'd fallen, and we'd lost. I was hurting, my nose bloodied, and my front teeth smashed. I had heard screaming around me. The clouds of pepper spray filled the air. I coughed, I retched, and I vomited. Even though we'd managed to bring so many people to our cause, even though we were sure it was enough, we'd lost. The police, brutal and heavily armored, had descended on us, and we hadn't fought back. There were so many humans among us, so many vulnerable people. I watched as my blood seeped into the dirt and asked myself one question again and again. Had I fought the worm, or had I surrendered to it? Wake for the forest. We gathered in a clearing to watch, to which I'd first woke up as a guru. Lisa stood in the middle of the clearing, the wolf and the weasel by her side. "Now," she said, looking at Cornell and Olga, "you two. You need to solve this today." Olga nodded. There was determination in her eyes. "I didn't always agree with you, Cornell," she said, "but we could use your skills right now." That night was long and full of hope. Olga talked to Cornell and Kim and Pat for a very long time, trying to convince them to stay. And I cannot pronounce that word. They weren't fond of the idea. Somehow I managed to convince them. We'd been through too much to sit together, to just part ways like that. Lisa and our patrons made sure that we did the right by the Guru laws, and the Sept matters were resolved. But it didn't cover everything that had happened that summer, though some consequences would have to unravel with time. Despite everything that had happened, Anya and Bartek were still alive. I counted that a small victory. We would disappear from each other's lives slowly, our paths too different to keep up with each other. Seeds and saplings. Your story is almost over. This might be a good time to take a last look at your character sheet. That is interesting. But it was all I still had ahead of me. That everything we'd lost, everything. That even we'd lost everything. I stood in the logging site, stunned. I closed my eyes and saw the forest and people in it. People foraging for berries, taking care of animals, cutting down trees that were too sick to stand, planting new ones. They became shepherds of the forest. We were once shepherds of the humans, I whispered to myself. Maybe they don't need us anymore. I opened my eyes and watched my tears fall onto a small green sapling with two leaves reaching toward me, like the ears of a curious bunny. What tree was it? Would it even survive? Whatever grew there, whatever forest reappeared, I wouldn't live to see it, I realized suddenly. But I could make sure that it had a chance to grow. We finished Heart of the Forest. Cubs gather around the fire and listen to the story of Maya Borodich, known among the Guru as Mist of the Children of Gaia, Ahurun of the Morning Wolf Mother Pack. She was an honorable warrior. Maya failed to save the Pushka. This failure would haunt her forever. The first protest against the logging of the Bioveska forest took place in 2016. The game was loosely inspired by those events. All characters and events depicted in this game are entirely fictitious. I gotta say, that was an interesting. That was a very interesting introduction to Werewolf the Apocalypse for me. I've played a lot of Vampire. I've played some Werewolf, but I haven't played as much as I would like. I'm not a big fan of the way that a lot of people that I have known to run the games. I'm not really a big fan of the way that they have run it in the past. It always seems to be a lot of hack and slash, and there's not enough spiritual growth involved for my taste. I've always wanted to play. I've always wanted to run Werewolf as an ST, but I've also been a little concerned with the way that the players that I'm used to seeing who play Werewolf would take my way of running it. I don't think that I would be satisfactory to them as a storyteller, I should say. Simply because I would focus more on the spiritual aspect and not on the combat of Werewolf. And I gotta say that this story was beautiful. I'm sorry I had a lot of hard times pronouncing some of the the Polish words. I've said it before. I'm dyslexic as it is, and reading English is not the easiest thing for me. But I gotta say, man, the story for this was beautiful and done well. I was interested in Maya's quest and everything that was going to happen to her, and it was also nice to have a game where your decisions mattered, but I don't feel let down as an observer, as a I guess as a game player, if this counts as really a game, more of like a choose your own adventure novel. I don't feel let down that I failed to protect the forest. In character as Maya, yes, I am highly disappointed in myself, but I don't feel like I wasted my time playing this game because of a failure in the plotline. That was my fault completely by the way that I handled things. But again, this was my first deep foray into Werewolf, and especially the way Werewolf is intended to be played. I did learn some interesting things. I knew a lot of the lexicon and how words like pack and sept and Aharoon and all that stuff. I knew exactly, but it was nice to see it in play. I had no idea Daniel was a lupus, especially a red talon. That was very interesting. I can see. Ooh, brand marketing manager Jason Carl, big fan. Oh, Outstar. Very cool. I'm gonna nerd geek over the people that I love seeing information about. It was such a beautiful story, and it was definitely not anything. I don't know how to put it. It was not anything. It wasn't overdone with anything. The fact that it was slightly based off a true story of what happened in 2016 with the forest, with the forest protests, definitely a cool thing. But I don't know. I'm sad that it's over. I'm sad that it's over because that was so cool. I'm gonna look for more of these definitely because this was fun. But that was Different Tales presents Werewolf the Apocalypse: Heart of the Forest. I might play this again. If I do play it again, I'm gonna wait a while, like a while. But I enjoyed the fact that we were reading that, and also got a chance to see. Got a chance to see like a character sheet and the growth. I like the fact that different things that I did let me trying to find words here. I'm really glad that different things that I did allowed me to see like the growth of my honor, the growth of my rage, how things would decrease and grow depending on the choices that you made. But I could sit here and I could talk about this for hours. And if anybody wants to have like a I don't know if anybody's interested in like a Q&A on my thoughts on this whole thing and how amazing it was, I'll be happy to add that to the playlist too. If you guys want to put questions in the comments, I'm happy to answer. But please like, subscribe, and if you guys have any other suggestions for games like this or just World of Darkness content that you'd like me to review or anything like that, please go ahead and drop that in the comments as well. Anyway, I am Voivode Maquette. This is our World of Darkness, and this has been the very beautiful Heart of the Forest story, which I am very sad to see end. And we will be back soon with another beautiful story set in the World of Darkness. Thank you very much for joining me. Good evening.